everyone, it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read this April. So this is coming late, but that has just been the theme lately, so I apologize, but you know what? Like, better late than never. We are getting there. As I mentioned when I was filming my March wrap-up, I'll have the link down below if you haven't seen that yet, but we're filming on the floor because of the dogs. They are now cuddling in the bed together though, so they're thriving, but I feel like if I like move the chair over, I will disturb the peace, and I just don't want to do that. So we're just dealing with kind of a weird angle today. But I actually have more books that I read in April than I did in March, which is surprising because I felt like March was the better reading month, but I think that's just my memory failing me as per usual. Anyways, that being said, I do have a lot of books to talk about today. I'm really excited to get chatting about them. I honestly, like, I feel like I read some really good books in the month of April. Like, March was kind of up and down, but I think that April was a little bit more on the upper end of things. I also have like little clips of my hair, which this used to be like my favorite way to wear my hair when I was a kid. I loved when my mom did actually she wouldn't do like two clips. She would sometimes, like the little butterfly clips, but she would do like two ponytails like that, and that was my favorite. But I never thought I would have my hair like this when am I 27 or 28? 27, I think. I don't even remember my age anymore. Years old, but whatever. We are just going to go with it because I want my hair out of my face and I felt like they matched. So without further ado, I've talked about nonsense for long enough. Let's just get into the books. Actually, reminder, I won't be spoiling any of these, but these are going to be the books that I'm going to talk about. That's pile 1 and then pile 2. So we have a lot to discuss. To start off, for the Stuff and Nonsense book club, which is my book club over on Patreon, I will have that link down below for you guys if you wanted to join, but that is the YA book club that I do. And for our inaugural book of the month, we read Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. We had a great discussion about this one. Honestly, this was a great book to start off with because since it's a mystery, there's just so much to talk about and there was so much like speculation to be had, and honestly, I had so much fun reading this with you guys. It was a great one to read along, and I did enjoy this one. I'm not generally like super into the mystery stories, but in this case I thought it was a very solid one. It dealt with some interesting things. Like, I definitely felt like it read like kind of a modern day Nancy Drew, and there was a bit of suspension of disbelief required. However, I did enjoy it. Like, overall, the little issues that I had weren't so much that I didn't enjoy it, and I think I will be reading the other 2 sequels in this series as well. Maybe sometime soon. I don't really know. If you wanted to join Patreon, we are now doing the Queen of Hearts book club for the month of May, and that is the adult book club, and we are reading The Happy Place by Emily Henry, so I'm very excited for that one. Now, since it was Ramadan, I decided to read Salam with Love by Sarah Sharaf Beg. This is a story that is set during the holy month of Ramadan, and it follows a character who is kind of learning more about her faith. She isn't as like devoted as other members of her family are, but she ends up going and staying with some family members that are like very much practicing Ramadan, and she's learning more about her culture, her faith, and also a little bit of a love story sprinkled in there. So there were a lot of things I appreciated about this story. I thought the representation was super well done, and I loved being exposed to that culture and learning more about exactly what Ramadan is. And I thought the romance was cute. My one thing is, I think for my personal taste, this read a little bit on the younger end of YA, and I've kind of like started to realize that I like the older end now, like books that have a bit more simplistic writing, and I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean like it's kind of more of a bare bones story. The voice is a little bit younger. They don't necessarily resonate with me as much, and this one definitely was on that younger end, so that was kind of where there was a bit of a disconnect. I also kind of felt like the story lacked a little bit of focus, and there were some inconsistencies. Like, for example, the main character loves music, but then she's like afraid of that. Her parents don't really accept that. They don't see it as a viable choice for her future, but then her cousins are all like really artistic and into different things like that, and they're accepted. So it was kind of like a weird, I don't know, double standard almost there, and that was just kind of a little thing that irked me. But overall, it was like a really sweet story. Next up, I read The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. So I have only read Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, but I know that this book has been super hyped up since it came out, and I believe that it's now released on Apple TV as a movie. Don't quote me on that though, because I'm not entirely 100% sure. I know there's an adaptation that's happening somewhere in the world for this one, and I think I expected to love this one more than I did, but I did enjoy it. It's kind of a similar thing with like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Everyone was talking about it, everyone was loving it, and I just didn't quite love it. I really liked it, but I didn't quite love it. And it was a similar thing here. I think I thought the focus of the story was going to be kind of different than what it was. And yeah, I can't really pinpoint like where it went wrong for me. But I do think, that being said, that this is definitely a book that if you are a book lover, you should read. Like every book lover should be reading this book because it speaks to that so highly and like just speaks to your soul, especially like independent bookstores. It will resonate with you. It did resonate with me. I just don't have the same like shout from the mountaintops reaction that other people seem to have. But yeah, it was, I don't know, it was an interesting one. Next up, I actually ended up DNFing You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle. So I read Just Like Magic, which is a Christmas book by this author at the Christmas season, and I almost DNF'd that one, but I ended up actually really loving it in the end. However, this one was super hyped up on TikTok, and I was like, okay, so this, like, it makes sense to want to read it, but I just could not. I think it was like 50%, 40% of the way through, and I was like, no, this is not for me. Like, I find that a lot of books, and not all of them, this is a generalization, but there are quite a few romances that are hyped up on TikTok that are usually like enemies to lovers or hate to love. And that is not my thing. Like, that is not my thing at all. And people are calling this a second chance romance, which I guess it kind of is, and that's why I get confused with that trope, because I totally thought it was like you used to date or used to be friends and then you haven't talked in a while and then you end up falling in love like later. But I think it's more, a lot of people categorize it more as like you've broken up and then you're getting back together. So in this case, it's two characters, like I loved the concept of it because it seems so unique. It's two characters who are engaged, and she, like, the whole time is just talking about how she's falling out of love with him. And I know that the point is that they are supposed to both be flawed. Like, they both have their issues, neither of them are right, but reading this, I could not possibly see a way that this story made sense for them to come back together. Like, I did not get it. I was not on board. I said no thank you, and I just could not continue with this. It made me miserable. It was making me not want to read it, and I was like, no. Like, I'm not reading romances to read about characters bitching about each other. I just want them to be happy-go-lucky. That's why I love, like, Friends to Lovers. Not into this one. So yeah, this was definitely a big no for me. I was way too irritated. Next, I read Lizzie Blake's Best Mistake by Maisie Eddings. So this is a book that features ADHD representation, which was really interesting for me because I was recently finally diagnosed after being like misdiagnosed when I was a kid. So it's something that I have been like reading a lot of nonfiction about and learning a lot about and working on. But I also enjoyed reading a fictional story about a main character that I could really relate to in so many ways. And I think that's why I kind of have a hard time judging this one, because it meant a lot to me personally, but it's maybe not like my favorite romance story necessarily. This one just like spoke to me on a personal level, so I don't really have like much to critique on it other than that. Like, the romance was just fine, it was cute, but definitely that added element of ADHD representation really meant a lot to me. Now, back in 2021, when we were going to be making our move from Windsor to the Montreal area, and I say Montreal area because we're like an hour outside of Montreal, but basically the Ontario to Quebec move, I did a couple of unhauls, and in one of them I asked you guys like what books I should keep, and I saved a couple of those, and then I was going to do a reading vlog. Oh, this is so long ago, but I was going to do a reading vlog reading them, but that never actually came to fruition because the move ended up being crazy and then my mental health went boom. So nonetheless, I did actually end up reading one of the books that you guys saved, and that was the Happy Ever After I can't speak. The Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez, which I have been saying Jimenez. I am so sorry. I absolutely did not know, and now I feel like an idiot, but I will correct that moving forward. So lots of you guys said that I would probably enjoy this one, and I ended up keeping it, and I did actually really enjoy this one. I was going to unhaul it because I kind of just picked it up on a whim when I was just getting into romances at first, and I then saw that like the reviews for The Friend Zone by this author were not very good, so I was like, I don't know if I want to like take this with me, but then you guys said it was really good, and indeed it was. I did have like a couple of issues with it, but overall it was a very sweet story that I could totally get behind. It starts with a dog, so that's how I knew like it was going to be an absolute winner for me, and the romance just like goes from there, and it definitely is insta-lovey, but it was really sweet. I didn't really mind it in this case. I will say, however, sometimes the like passion of their relationship could get to be a bit much. Like it was a lot of like self-sacrificing on both sides, and I was kind of like it felt like they were living for each other at points, and I think they got past that, but it was just like it went like hot and heavy real fast, and I wasn't the hugest fan of that. But I did like it's dealing with a celebrity as well, so you have that celebrity dynamic in there. I don't know why I've been reading so many books recently, especially romances that have celebrities in them, but that seems to be a thing in like the past 6 months or so, and I have enjoyed most of them, and this one definitely, it made me want to read more by this author, which I think speaks to my enjoyment of it. Next I read Friday I'm in Love by Cameron Garrett. This is by the author of, what else have I read by this author? Full disclosure, that's what I've read by this author, and she writes queer love stories, and in this case the main character wants to have a coming out party, so she's planning this whole coming out party. It is a very sweet story. It is dealing with a character who is struggling financially, and that's definitely like a main topic of it, and she's also struggling with being accepted for who she is, and like worry about her parents accepting her or her mom accepting her for who she actually is. But she wants to plan this whole thing. Like, once again, this was kind of a really realistic representation of teenagers for me. I mentioned in my March wrap up a couple of books that had very realistic, like flawed teenagers who are making decisions that you kind of shake your head at, but then you're like, well, it is a teenage main character, and I enjoy the fact that it shows characters making mistakes, and that was definitely the case here. But overall it was a super cute story, definitely one that I think should be on your TBR for June to celebrate Pride Month. I mean, what is better than that than a coming out story, like a coming out party? Next I read Spice Road by Maya Ibrahim, and this was a fun fantasy story. It's one that, like, to be honest, I don't fully remember what the whole plot was. I don't know why, but this one has kind of like totally slipped my mind. I do remember it deals with genies, which was really cool, and it had a cool world to it, so that kind of sucked me in, but apparently it immediately is just out of my brain, so I apologize for that. But if you are looking for like a adventure story that is set in the desert, deals with genies, all that cool stuff, this is solid. I'm not really faulting the book for the fact that I don't remember what happened, to be honest. I can remember bits and pieces, but my memory is terrible when it comes to all books. Next, I read The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This was quite hyped up as well, but then a lot of you guys, when I did that survey about like your least favorite books that you read in, I think it was 2021, quite a few of you said this one, and I thought that was weird because I had seen it everywhere, but then apparently a lot of you didn't like it. I enjoyed it. I did have a couple of things with it, like it kind of in an odd way reminded me of the Library of Lost Things, and I don't really know why, but it has this like then and then now format where you're back in like, I don't know if it's Victorian era or whatever, something like that, at this apothecary where this woman is using the apothecary to help other women who have been like scorned and need the help. And then you're in modern day when someone is like researching things. So the modern day wasn't my favorite. I didn't think that plot line was like entirely necessary. It was an interesting addition, but I didn't think it had to be there. I guess it was just showing how, like, I don't know, these things still happen today. I don't really know. It was just, it was a little bit superfluous to have that in there, but it didn't like entirely affect my enjoyment of it. I just definitely looked forward to the historical elements much more. Next up is Well That Was Unexpected by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This is by the author of Dial A for Aunties, which I loved. This is a YA book. book by this author, and it is not her first YA book. She has some like mystery ones, but it is the first one to me. So she's a new to me YA author, and I really enjoyed this. It is about a main character who is caught by her mom about to have sex with her boyfriend. So then she ends up going to Indonesia with her mom. Like, that's her mom's solution, which I think is amazing. And her mom is showing her her whole family, and like she ends up caught in circumstances that are really funny, which is kind of what I expect from Jessica Sutanto. She has like really humorous writing that is just tons of fun to read, but she ends up getting caught in this fake dating relationship with the son from a very well-known and very wealthy family in Indonesia, and it's just like all of the fallout from there. This was so cute, definitely what I was wanting, and I would highly recommend this one. It was just a lot of fun. It also totally like transported me to Indonesia and made me want to drink just like buckets of coffee, and especially like just go to Indonesia to do that, honestly. It was really good. After that, I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is my first contemporary novel of Taylor Jenkins Reid. I know she has like a few, but I've only read the historical fictions and like the more recent ones, so all the hits basically that everyone else has read, but the concept of this one intrigued me, and I did like it. Like, it is one of those books that will make you think. It is a love triangle, but in the worst way. It is about two characters, high school sweethearts. They get married, and then on their 1-year wedding anniversary, he ends up going missing. Her husband ends up going missing, and then he is missing, presumed dead, because they can't find him. And it's like 5 years or so later, I can't remember. Oh, it doesn't actually say how many years, but years later, she is now engaged to someone else, and she is finally happy again. She's opening herself up to these things again, and then he comes back. Like, he made his way back. And it's just like, what are you gonna do then? Like, the old love, the new love, like, what is happening? And it is such a fascinating story, honestly. This was super interesting, and it made me want to check out more of her contemporary novels, which I had never really thought of doing before. So I think there's one, I think it has like burnt toast on the cover. I might try that one next. It kind of reminds me of the concept of this one a little bit, but we'll see. Next, I read Our Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is the sequel to it's Our Violent Ends. I keep on doing that. This is the sequel to oh my god. This is the sequel to These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. So it is a world, like Secret Shanghai is what the universe is called, and it is Shakespeare retellings, and Romeo and Juliet in particular. This one definitely like starts to go on the more like legit Romeo and Juliet route, which was interesting, but it is about rival gangs in Shanghai. Why can I not speak? I am so sorry, but these gangs are in Shanghai in the 1920s, and this is following the first book like right after it, and it was just a really interesting way to end the series. I am going to read the other books that are in this universe, and I'm super excited to dive back into it. The next one, Foul Lady Fortune, is set in the 1930s in Shanghai, and it is following, what is it? As You Like It. So that's one of my faves, so I'm really excited. Okay, last few books here. So next is Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. I got this at Target, and I can't get that freaking sticker off. I know, I think if you take like a hair dryer to it, then it will come off. I've just been lazy and have not gotten there yet. But this is a magical realism, and it was really interesting. It starts with like one character, and then you're kind of following that character, but then you're more following a side character. So it kept me guessing. It was very unique, and honestly, it's another one that I still don't really quite know what I think about it. That's all I really have to say about that book. I feel like I meander on sometimes and just start babbling, and like I'm doing right now, and I'm trying to just kind of like get to the point so that I'm not talking forever and this video won't be ages long. But next is We Weren't Looking to Be Found by Stephanie Kuhn. I picked this up solely for the cover. Honestly, like, I'm not even gonna lie, this was a complete cover buy. I am such a sucker for a beautiful cover, and this one definitely absolutely sucked me in. And I didn't know anything about it when I started reading it, to be entirely honest. I just kind of picked it up one day, and I ended up finishing it like really quickly, actually. It is a very triggering story, so definitely look into the triggers before you read this one, like self-harm, suicide, mental health, drug use. There's a lot, okay? Like, honestly, there are a lot of things. So it is written by a psychologist, and it is following two girls who are at a a mental health retreat essentially, and it's kind of like a quiet plot there following them. And yeah, I had mixed feelings on it, but overall I did kind of enjoy it as much as you can enjoy a story like this. It was interesting. And finally is Lies We Sing to the Sea by Sarah Underwood. So this once again was kind of like an impulsive pickup for me. I picked it up shortly after it came in the mail to me, and I've seen most of the critique is that people like it's not accurate to the actual Odyssey story, but I have not read the Odyssey. I don't have that much familiarity with it. So just going off my enjoyment, I enjoyed this one a lot more than I was expecting to. I kind of struggle sometimes with Greek mythology stories because I find they can be super confusing for me and I'm like, what is happening? But this was kind of not, and I don't know what the difference was, but I felt like it was kind of what I wanted Circe to be. Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of Circe. I'm sorry if you can hear the very loud car, but I was, oh my god, so loud. Is that necessary? No. I wasn't the biggest fan of Circe because I found I was just very confused. And this has kind of a similar concept, and it is a sapphic love story, and it's also like a tragedy. It's just, it was a beautiful story overall, and I felt like it kind of took care of the issues that I had with Circe in terms of being very confused. I think I'm just too dumb for mythology. For some reason, my brain is just like, no, thank you. But yeah, those are all the books that I read in April. I'm hoping this video isn't going to be ages long because it did take me much longer to film than I was expecting it to. But I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know if you have read any of these books, your thoughts on them, because I would love to know. And I will see you guys in another new video soon. Bye!